Hi, everyone. This is a Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. This is Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast. And today I am just really thrilled to speak with Arlene Mendoza. She and I actually had met at a conference or a summit actually a few weeks ago in Chicago. And I met her, and within that whole first impression thing, within 15 seconds, I was like, this person has got to be on my show. And then later on, I found out she led a team of people really in the innovation space and tech. And I thought I have to have her on. So that's why you're on here, Arlene. Welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you. No, wonderful to connect.
So where are you right now in your leadership journey?
Growing. I made a pivot, a very intentional pivot in the last year. It's been about 16 months now. And I feel that I am at a bit of a beginner's mind, where I came from corporate for the last 12 years and moved now into tech, nonprofit, innovation, public policy space, and growing and learning about how to translate skills I've had, develop skills, and learn from others in this space, and reflect a lot.
It's interesting because that's what I took away from my time with you is just how much of a learner you are. I mean, you're just soaking up all the information. You're actively asking questions from people that maybe have either been there or whatever, and you're just looking to like, how do I do it, and how do I iterate, and how do I move forward, and I think that's the way that we need to think about leadership so much is it really is about iteration. This next book I'm writing, it's called The Art of Carrying Leadership. And it's an art because it really is kind of a palette that we all use, and we do it. We show up in different ways, but in the end, that art piece, right? It produces a certain level of emotion for people that we lead. And I think when you're doing this iteration, soaking in, learning, like people who are listening right now, you are constantly evolving because you're listening to new content. So. Yeah, I think it's amazing that's just how you show up, Arlene. I appreciate that about you.
Thank you. Well, and I love how you say it's an iterative process and it's an art, because there's not one course I think people can take or one book you read. I listen to a lot of different podcasts and read a lot of different books, from Buddhism to clinical psychology to leadership to efficiency to, habit formings, etc. But I think it's a very personal journey. And what is your intent? Like, what impact are you trying to work towards? And then understand. For me, it took a while, to understand my own like secret sauce or superpower. It took a while for me to understand what that was about me, because we all operate every day and we do certain things in our own little box. And sometimes I think it took others to recognize or comment on, hey, you might do that really well. Like that strategy piece, you do that well. Because it wasn't always second nature that certain things were. So I think part of this journey is the ask and the iterate and the listen.
Ooh, love that. Ooh. Hope you guys are listening to that. That was a good one. That was a nugget. Ask and iterate and listen. Oh, that was good. Okay, so I'm curious to know the people that are on your team, how did they describe your leadership style?
Oh, that's such a good. I've been thinking about doing 360s with my team and figuring out because I've been there. I'm going on 5 months. I think I would imagine that they say energetic. I would imagine they say strategic, and I would imagine they also. I can talk very fast without always explaining and asking enough questions. And I find myself saying, do you get it? People are like, no. And so I think maybe moving too fast or making some assumptions or not always being curious enough. Or so I think maybe some of that. But I would say also moving forward, I'm very much about let's hit this milestone. Let's like, what's next? So a little bit of all of that combination, and maybe silly,
Yes.
like silly. Because I like to do just like Fortnite dancing or something. Just like funny things. My Slack emojis are funny. So.
Oh, I love it. Well, I think that's what came over when I met you too. I just thought, wow, I mean, the amazing amount of energy, strategic vision and moving forward action. And I'm naturally attracted to those type of people. I think people who want to change or are proactive about their own journey. And they also are looking to uplift others. And all of that is just super exciting to me. So that's awesome. Now, I'm curious to know where your drive to lead comes from. And I've noticed that after speaking to, having 110 podcast calls now so far, there are some buckets of where people might land on this question. Where does your leadership drive come from? Where does that drive to lead originate for you?
I can remember when I was 4, and I remember sitting at this table with my family, and it was this very formal family dinner. And everybody said no elbows on the table. And like, it was just this rule, right? No elbows on the table, like sit, like hands on your lap, be proper. And one of the older gentlemen had his elbows on the table, and it was like, everything was okay for him, but nobody else could do this. And I remember thinking, why do we have to be like this? Like, why is that okay? What is it that I can't also have my elbows on the table? And I think from a really young age, I imagined things could be different. And I imagined, what if, or why not? And why not me? And so I think there's this curiosity and exploratory part of me that I didn't acknowledge that with leadership as much as I acknowledged it with why not? But with that, why not? Like, why not live this way? Why not go after that degree? Why not go after grad school? Why not do this? So in that space, in order to hit that why not, there's action. And I believe that I have this expansive, curious mind. And so as I imagine things in my life, I try to lift and go. And so I think it's just kind of this curious, rambunctious, optimistic part of me that believes, I think, in addition to all of everything I was saying, that I believe there's also a responsibility to be a voice. So there's also I feel this responsibility to be curious and stay curious, to navigate new ways of doing things. So I don't know if that. So, yeah.
No, that totally helps. I think that's amazing. I mean, I think about this level of innovation and a person who's curious, we need to be that way. We need to be that way for ourselves to figure out like how we're growing, how we're moving forward, particularly in a time like right now with coronavirus. It's really nuts, like trying to be curious about what we can do to change the world right now. What can we do individually? And then it's, what do we do to impact and help our own people, those that we lead who really do need us in times like this, but always, to be that voice of curiosity, to be the one who listens, who's the sounding board for them, to help them iterate, to help them think through things differently. Because right now in their minds, we all might be putting ourselves in boxes and helping them to open. I told myself just recently that I don't really, the reason why I think I'm attracted to people like you and people who are more, I have a friend named Nick, he's really innovative. I think it's because I do truly in the gut believe in iteration. I believe in like not perfection, but in good enough is good enough kind of thing. But then like when I also think of myself as I do have some boxes in my life. So I think of there are some areas and some corners that I'm in and other people are in, and I'm okay with some of that. But I don't like when those boxes are doors that are locked. I prefer that the boxes have openings that don't have a key, that are not lockable. And so we can always walk in and out of those. And that's how I see leadership being, right? Where we are sitting with our people, whether it's via Zoom, whether it's in person, and it's okay to open up that door and to go deeper and to dig deeper, and to help them and me think differently in the process of whatever we're trying to get through. And I think when you're talking about all the things you do in the innovation space and tech and how can we move this forward in strategy, and love that about you. I think that's all part of that, because then you get them to see, like immediately I saw after meeting you, wow, the potential's there. Like there's so much potential. Like, well, I could go this way. And I think that's what leaders need to do for their people. So you are a true example of how do we personally iterate and innovate, and how do we show our other people to think more iteratively, I think, and think more innovatively in their current situation, removing limitations that we have in our minds. Because most of this stuff happens in our minds. Let's just be clear on that, right?
Yeah.
That's the limitations, the boxes, it's our own heads.
I want to add that as I'm listening to you and I'm reflecting on your question, that I've also had examples of leadership to your question, because part of it is, I think, my own personality of how I'm wired, but it's complemented really strongly with grandfathers and parents. My dad had this saying when we were little of, you're going to figure it out. Like, you need to figure it out. And it was this culture of, when you have come to me with a problem, you better have tried certain things or have assumed certain things, or like, don't just say, this is broken. What do I do? Come with me. Come with the nails. Come with a hammer. Tell me that you've tried different size nails. Tell me that you've tried different types of wood. And so I think that type of just parenting with my dad also made me extra resilient. And then my grandfather is an explorer. I mean, he believed in coming to the U.S. in the Bracero program, in the 60s. And he just liked to meet people and travel. And he was kind of this, like, the world is my oyster type of mindset. And so I think a lot of that is infused, unknowingly in our family, in our culture, in how we do things and how we view the world. And so my sister and I, we laugh a lot because we are very, did you try this? Did you try this? Did you try it? Like, don't come to me with a bunch of problems unless you've already tried or thought of or considered or Googled. Or so to add to my leadership style, I think that has also played a role, that I've seen it, that it's been modeled for me.
I love that.
Very community based. My mom and my dad are very, how do we serve our community, support our community with whatever gifts we have. So.
Oh, I love that. And I would say, like, leaders in our home, leaders in our community, leaders in our workplaces, when I'm talking about leadership of the heart. So I think all of these things meld really well. I mean, I think about modeling that type of behavior in a meeting with team members. And then when they come to me, they would know that I'm going to ask them, what have you tried so far? What didn't go well? How was that? How are you feeling about it? I got to ask all these questions. So if they would already anticipate I'm going to ask them that, then they might as well do the work ahead of time, because otherwise I'm going to probably send them back out to do some of that work anyway, so they can do some of it ahead of time and maybe move us forward more quickly. So I like that idea, and even that strategy with coworkers. So I'm curious. So for those who are listening, this is the most interesting part of the show. And it is when I want you to think of a time when maybe you were not the most enlightened leader like you are today. And what did you do to come out of that? Like a specific story you can share with everybody.
I do have one, and it was a pretty pivotal moment, I think, in my life and my career and my identity. So I'll come back to that word because I realized in this last year, I took a sabbatical, and there was a lot of reflections that came out of that. But in the last role that I had before leaving corporate, I had worked so hard to get to this team in the headquarters, and I felt that I was not showing up, and I wasn't the projects I was working on, my heart wasn't in it the way it used to be. The PowerPoints I was developing, the content, the reports I was writing, they were not full of detail. It wasn't detailed enough, it wasn't specific enough. I was going out to visit these client sites, and I wasn't collecting enough insights to inform our teams to make decisions. I was doing a poor job of reporting back because my team depended on my information in order to make the sale happen. And I was not as insightful and as much of the team leader as I should have been in order to help the team make the deal. And what I realized at that time is, and I was doing this for a couple months, and it was really difficult to understand and to just tell myself, Arlene, it's okay for you to take a pivot, to make a change. It's okay for you to look for another opportunity. Because I had been with a company 12 years, right? And I'm a loyal person. Like, I'm wired for loyalty, and I give you my all when I'm on your team. And I know when I'm not, and I was embarrassed of my work. And then the moment I really realized was, I just remember we had a call with some directors, and I felt so complacent. I felt so unemotional during the meeting as I was reporting out some of the data. And I could feel his frustration, and I could feel his disappointment, and I didn't care. In that moment, when I knew that there was a shift that needed to happen, and I made a decision to leave the company. And so I think for me, the moment of when I'm not there for my team, I'm not showing up, my work is, for me, in that moment where I was, it was an opportunity for me to explore a new path and give myself the permission that this work that you're doing here, although it's not reflective of your potential and it's not up to par in any way, it doesn't mean, Arlene, you're a failure. Because I lived in that circle of, Arlene, you suck, just do better work, grind out those reports, be more insightful, be smarter. And Heather, I beat myself up for months to try to be that for my team. And it came to a point where I was realization that I have a choice. I can be in search of another opportunity.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's a hard one. And it's hard sometimes to even be able to retell those stories because all those emotions come right back up in the mix of it. And I was right there with you as you were talking about it, and the level of growth that comes from those times when you are staring yourself in the mirror. And kudos to you, because there's a lot of people who don't stare themselves in the mirror. They just do years and years of doing that, making everybody around them miserable. And they don't have that level of maturity, because that's really what it took. To look inward, to kind of bow out, is I'm going a different direction now, pivot, like you said, and then to come back stronger, which you have with your new team and the company you're with.
And I want to add that it's a process, and I think because my mind is to iterate and learn and improve from where I am, is I have this circle, like Brene Brown kind of has her Fab Five. Like I call it my Fab Five of people who do you turn to when you need honest feedback and you want to ask somebody a question. So I have certain people that I call on when I say, yo, this isn't working. This is where I am. This is what's going on. What do you think? And one of my closest friends in that moment, his name's Caesar, and he runs an engineering, and then he's a CEO for an engineering firm in Long Beach, California. And he said, you have a skill set. You know that the opportunity for you to shine is out there. Like, believe that you can go and find it. But I was at such a low point and trying to prove myself in the system where I was in my box that I believed that unless I proved myself in my box, then I really wasn't worth it. And it took somebody else telling me, yo, you can shine elsewhere. This box is like this big in a world that's this big. So sometimes you need those external touch points and reflections, I think, to help move you. Like, I don't do, no one does this by themselves, right? Like, this isn't an isolated, I think leadership and growth is not an isolated event.
I'm curious to know, what do you do when things get a little nutty and there's deadlines, which is probably nonstop where you're working, but what do you do to reconnect with your direct report, with your team members, and just, I don't know, get back to center, I guess?
Well, one of the things prior to the corona, walking meetings. So we have an office in Oakland, and one of the things we were doing was, there's a lake, it's called Lake Merritt, and I'd say, let's go for a walk on the lake. And that was our check-in. Or if anyone, just to chat about life or a project or any challenges coming up. I was working to try to introduce, and one of our directors, she's our chief strategist. She also is in support of the walking meeting. So that's one thing.
Nice.
To get out. And then I also am a huge believer in Slack, like memes and videos and like fun. Like, I would just Slack you on the messaging platform. Funny thing, or just something to lighten the mood, or one of the cool things with our teams is on Slack we have all these channels that are random and funny, and I created a custom Spotify playlist for our team, and I asked everybody, we had an innovation workshop last year, and I asked everybody to submit their top 3 songs. And so the day of the innovation workshop, I came with my little Bose speaker, and I had customized a Spotify playlist. And during the breaks, I would play the strategy and innovation custom playlist. And now, so there's just, I think, things like that.
I love it. I like you guys listening in. You hear this. Like I said, she's like super innovative, and you wouldn't be thinking about some of these cool things that she's doing. And I love it. So let's emulate, right? I always believe in like emulating and then tweaking it a little bit to make your own. And so let's go with Arlene on this one, right? Okay, so for leaders right now that might be listening in, that could be at a crossroads at their journey on leadership, or just looking for some extra motivation to get them through the rest of this week. What are a couple of pearls of wisdom you might leave them with?
Learn to listen. And take the time to learn to listen to yourself first, and learn to silence. So what I love is our friend Melissa Hughes has a lot of nuggets around neuroscience, and one of her nuggets is around how many, like up to 60,000 thoughts a day. And a lot of those could be negative thoughts that are created in your brain. And I think the listening and the awareness of that, they're just thoughts, right? They're these thoughts that come in. So can you create some stillness to listen and differentiate the emotion and the thought? And can you ask of your team, how are you? And have the patience to listen.
I'm going to settle in on that one because I'm all about, listening to the team members is a North Star for me. So yeah, that helps me to just settle in and take some deep breaths and think about how well I'm listening, even here while we're at home, with me with 6 of us here. How well am I listening?
Well, and
it's a lot.
So Oscar Trimboli wrote this book, and he talks about listening to, what did he say? Instead of listen to respond, listen to understand.
Yes.
So that distinction for me stayed with me a lot because I have been the individual who listens, but just to respond back. But when you shift it to listen to understand, it's a whole different dynamic because it's not about you. It's about extracting and understanding what is it that the person is trying to communicate to you.
And that's really the crux of it, isn't it? I mean, if we are listening as leaders, we're not leaders.
And if it doesn't work and you kind of just fail and you interrupt, then don't be so hard on yourself because you're like that. You might do that and just try again in an hour.
Yes, isn't that so true? You're talking about grace right there, giving yourself the grace to not be perfect, but don't also give yourself too much slack. No pun intended.
Right.
Don't give yourself too much slack because don't let yourself be too loose about it. You do want to continue to try. It's about continuous improvement. Yes. It's not about perfection.
Yes.
So don't say, well, that's just not me. No, I'm just not a good listener. No, that is not okay. But it is okay to say, okay, I tried and it didn't work. I'm going to try again. That is absolutely what we're looking at here. So thank you so much for dropping that nugget. I think that's a quite potent one. And I really appreciate you coming on. And for those who are listening right now, if you found a great value in listening to my conversation with Arlene, please do share it. Share it far and wide because that's how people get access to the content. There are a lot of leadership podcasts out there, but as you know, I'm a little biased. I think there's something special here. And it's because we're revealing not just the great things that great leaders do, but the times when great leaders aren't perfect. And I think that's where the brilliance is about this show. So please share it. And also don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you might listen. And it's super helpful. So thank you so much, Arlene, for joining. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much, Heather. I appreciate the time.
And thanks everybody for joining the Leadership with the Heart podcast. Have a great one. Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.